Let's talk about this story. As the net zero saga continues throughout Britain, pressure is being put on the heavy industry. Rob Lyons from Spiked stated that while global trading conditions have played their part, the reason that Britain's plants keep closing is really down to one thing: our obsession with reaching net zero. Let's speak to Rob now on this very point. Rob, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
It's amazing, isn't it, really? This is a kind of a sort of industrial suicide going on here.
It really is. I mean, when we're at a point in the sort of the world economy where we've got China producing more and more stuff powered by coal, much more cheaply than we are producing things, and we're trying to defend jobs and economic security by having a manufacturing and heavy industry base of our own, to be making energy more and more expensive. And it's not just energy either. It's just all the stuff around net zero and the environment generally, which makes doing business in Britain really expensive. And so companies, the news of last week about this plant closing in Fife, big companies like ExxonMobil go, well, where should we do this? Should we invest hundreds of millions in bringing this plant up to date? Or should we just move the production somewhere else where the energy is cheap? The answer is they're moving, and we're losing jobs, and we're ending up importing this stuff rather than producing it ourselves.
Yeah, ExxonMobil being a classic case of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but it's not just the UK either. I mean, so you look what's happening in Germany as well. But at least the Germans know that heavy industry is really important. And so they don't impose the full costs of net zero on their heavy industry. So we have the highest industrial energy prices in the world. So why would anybody do business here? And the only thing it's achieving is not cutting emissions, it's costing British people their jobs.
Yeah, indeed. And is this really as crude and rudimentary as, you know, organisations looking, or various parts of the equation looking at sort of heavy plant and kit and saying, well, this is bad for the planet, so therefore people are discombobulating and howling at the moon and goodness knows what else, and therefore deciding that, you know, this isn't an industry that any longer is viable, or an industry is certainly not viable over here?
And what I mean, so take that Fife plant, for example. It was making a raw material called ethylene, which is then worked up into plastics. Polyethylene is one of the most commonly used plastic in the world. And we're not going to stop using plastic anytime soon. It's incredibly useful. So what's going to happen is this raw material is going to be produced somewhere else. The plastics are still going to be produced, and we're going to be importing things rather, you know, so this isn't saving carbon emissions if you look at it on a global scale. It's just making it impossible to do business in the UK.
Is anyone listening to this? I mean, I know we have an interesting government at the moment that aren't necessarily that au fait with how our business works, and that's demonstrated by many of the decisions they've been making. But is there an ear out there anywhere in Westminster that understands the perilous nature of what is happening?
Well, the Conservatives, after imposing a lot of this stuff, I mean, it was after all Theresa May's government that introduced net zero as a target back in 2019. They suddenly have kind of woken up and smelt the coffee and realised that we have to do something about this, although given that they imposed it in the first place, I'm a little bit sceptical. Reform for quite a while have said that we need to scrap net zero targets. So there are voices in Westminster now that are aware of how big a problem this is. But when you've got a Labour government, you know, where the energy policy is decided by Ed Miliband, who is very, very ideological about this kind of thing, and you've got the blob, the civil service, the Quangos and all that, who are very much on board with this and will do anything to resist it. I think we really need to have a major sea change in this. I don't know how many more jobs have to be lost, how many more budgets are going to be made a mess of because the economy is shrinking.
Indeed, the economy is shrinking, and of course, you know, that flag of being a sort of a global figure on the stage diminishes by the day when we see things like this. You know, we were once a country where people looked to us as being pioneers and world leaders in this area, and now we have all this caper going on, which is clearly, by any measure, you haven't got to be an economist to realise, Rob, that that's not good for any economy.
No, and it's not as if we haven't done anything about carbon emissions in the past. I mean, it's like, so just shifting from coal to produce electricity over to gas cut emissions a lot. And we've in many other ways we've cut emissions as well. Sometimes, admittedly, we've just exported the jobs rather than actually cut the emissions that we're producing. But nonetheless, we have gone a long way, and there is very little global advantage now in doing this. We see with the COP30 talks that ended at the weekend that actually people are losing interest in this stuff. They can't reach an agreement on anything, and there's no merit to this at all until we get better technology that can produce electricity at a much lower price that's green. Then we should stop what we're doing at the moment. And you see this new report today about nuclear power, how to make it cheaper in this country. The amount of money that we're wasting on building these nuclear plants that would produce green energy, like £700 million for the so-called fish disco to stop fish from going into the intake pipes of Hinkley Point power station, which they're building at the moment. It's just mad regulation, and we need to get rid of all of this and put economic growth back at the centre of what these regulations and what the economic policy of this government is about. And if we do that, we can save jobs, we can grow the economy, and solve some of these problems that we've got that Rachel Reeves is facing in the budget on Wednesday.
Yeah, that is fair. Listen, Rob, can't wait for Wednesday. It's going to be enlightening, isn't it? Great to have you on, though. Rob Lyons is Science and Technology Director at the Academy of Ideas, also a Spiked columnist too. Thank you to him. More